So I'm aware that I've screwed us.
Yeah, I don't know why you did this, but you're like, hey, next time
Wouldn't it be fun?
we'll randomize it. Thanks, Bailey.
Oh dear. So what's going to happen is we've got the cursed music app open, and we're just going to press play, and then we'll see. I mean, we should probably turn the volume down so we don't get infringed on copyright. And then we're going to find out what plays, and then we'll probably pause this recording and then come back once we've figured out what we're talking about. Is that a plan?
No, I don't think we should pause. We should
Just
roll on
Okay, great.
and make it up on the spot.
Stuff it. We're doing it live.
Here we go. Ruby through the looking glass.
Shit. That was a way good. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, Ruby. Hi, I'm Michael Earp.
And I'm Bailey Turner,
Welcome to Michael's Walk.
the podcast.
Michael's Walk is a road trip, a search for something. Spoilers, it's myself, and it was inside all along.
If only it were that simple.
Driven by Tori Amos's album, Scarlet's Walk, I'm recreating the journey Scarlet took in its 20th anniversary year.
I'll also be there.
With the loving and patient
Always patient.
support of Bailey and Teague Lee, 3 trans queers set out across America
That's 33 states in 55 days.
to connect with the songs, the land that inspired them, and the fans inspired by the songs. We'll talk music, travel, healing, and hope as we ask the questions: how do I heal from 15 years of coercive control and manipulation?
And what role does the music we listen to play in our own relationship narratives?
We've self-produced this podcast and trip.
You can support us via GoFundMe.
For the full story, head to michaelerp.net. Feel a little
I mean, the handy thing about Ruby is this is one that we both know very intimately, so we don't have to kind of do a lot of looking up.
It's probably my most listened to Scarlet's Hidden Treasures. That's at least before they added Mountain, the original Scarlet's Hidden Treasures, which was the 6 tracks.
Yeah.
I listened to this so much.
I'd never heard it. The first time I heard this was live
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty sure it was Unrepentant Geraldine's. And I was kind of blown away by her, as anyone would be. But yeah, do you want to tell us a little about it?
So, there's a baby. There was an error with the microphone, and the next 2 minutes are really, really crackly. But if you can't put up with it, just skip forward 2 minutes. Apologies.
So, I mean, she wrote it while she was after one of her several books.
I don't actually know her personal narrative with it, and it came out as a sort of bonus. Scarlet and Tash was a baby by then, so it had been sitting in the background. But it's also a bit more about the relationship going on between the parents, just necessarily the child. And interestingly enough, the way I trauma bonded with it is it just it perfectly captured a relationship that is constantly full of argument.
Yes.
And I almost interpret it like Ruby was the me inside that I was trying to protect from. And she gives us things.
Yeah.
Fighting.
Well, yeah, that's that inner voice. That sort of child within, just, not necessarily like an actual baby, but yeah. The line, as a man do you find, doesn't every boy smoke to cry? It's just, I think the whole thing is just such a beautiful remark on the differences between men and women, and that's it's such an untidy, uncomfortable thing to sing about now, to talk about, what when we were younger was known as the battle of the sexes, and that was just such a, gender discourse has evolved so much that we've kind of written off old categories in a way, but there's definitely still these sort of interplay that sort of seeks some kind of harmony between, you know, couples who are on some version of heterosexuality.
Well, I feel like your perspective of us having moved on from these discussions is a queer perspective.
Sure.
I've like a lot of the research that I've done for this book and this project is still very heteronormative focused,
sure.
and still very much focuses on what she's singing about here.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just interesting when you are not necessarily a woman, but that's the role I'm casting myself in the song too.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's a long held pattern that we try and emulate. I mean, I am in a straight relationship as such.
Yeah, God, heteros.
Gross.
So gross.
You know, straight apparent, because we're both big queers. But it is that sense of, you know, who plays what role, and how does it feel when the roles align
wear the
with...
pants?
Yes, indeed. But how does it feel when those roles kind of align with the gender presentation that we have?
Mm-hmm.
And how does it feel when we're, in quotation marks, you know, going against the grain of that? You know, like, what does it mean? How does it feel when I'm the, you know, if I'm the primary breadwinner for any given period, or when the positioning of our intimate life, you know, all that sort of stuff, just it plays in. And
Congratulations on submitting for your partner visa.
Oh yeah, that's a nice thing that happened in my life today.
Speaking of partnership.
Yes. Yep, we're making a good go of it.
Amazing.
It's going to be lovely. It's been a long journey, and it's been a very powerful journey to kind of put together. You know, we had to write all these documents and get the help of people like yourself, you know, and thank you so much for being a big witness to this relationship, you know, someone who was there on the, you know, in its...
Michael, write something. Oh, okay then.
From the very beginning, and just realised quite how far we've come in, you know, 2 and a bit years. The fact that we were talking about doing this really early, because we made a real commitment from the jump that if we were going to do long distance, then we were going to be together for the long haul. And the fact that we've kind of made it to this junction is massive.
Love it.
Yeah. And like, you know, such a special connection to this trip that we made. I'm trying to think of times when this song might have, you know, connected with some of the things we got up to while we were away. I don't know. Does anything kind of come to mind for you about...
You know, the little hand turning. We've seen Alien, right?
I was wondering where you were going to go with this. But that was a different party. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I did have a badge once, button badge, I had taken a tag off a toy that was being sold at my job at the time and turned it into a badge, and it said, "I'm a hand puppet."
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
I feel like we've gotten off track. How does Ruby fit into our...
We're just trying to think about some things from, you know, from the walk that resonated with this.
Well, it's interesting because I'm in the throes of editing.
You are. You've had a big editing bonanza, like a filibuster of editing, which is great news for the people who are listening to this, because it means that the book draws ever closer.
Though 84 years. And I'm writing I'm editing the second half, which is filled with a lot of discord between Teague and I, due to miscommunication, misunderstanding, communication barriers. We weren't talking on the phone because Teague finds phone calls uncomfortable. So everything was done via text in different time zones, which led to a lot of just misreading what the other person was saying constantly. So it felt like we were in this very uncomfortable, not quite argumentative, but certainly the equilibrium was off for almost an entire month.
Sure.
And I guess that harks to the argument side of the song.
Yeah.
and really sort of struck home a lot of my insecurities, and I had to really interrogate where they were coming from, as did Teague. And what we both discovered was all of our fears were based on previous experiences, and we were no longer dating our exes, which is quite fortunate.
Yes, it is. It's a really tricky thing. It's a tricky habit to break. Not, behaving toward your current partner as though they will repeat the behaviors of your previous partners.
Yeah. And then there was this one thing that my therapist said to me, because I was doing online therapy sessions while we were traveling.
That's right, because I have to go out for like little walks at certain points.
Yeah.
Keep myself entertained.
Yeah, in Green River, where you went to that dead shopping centre.
Oh my God, that's right. That was when me and Aaron started talking. Oh, that was no, it wasn't when we started talking.
You were
That's
talking before that.
No, we were talking. No, that was when we started falling for each other. Was that drive out of Green River? Because that was when he sent all those songs on Spotify, and that was when I was like, oh. So, but the night before, when I went to that shitty Starbucks in an abandoned this tiny dead mall in the middle of absolutely nowhere, like
I can't even, because it was Green River. Was it like Red
Three
Rock?
Forks
No,
shortly after that or something.
Yeah, that was a bit further up the road. It was just, I'm sure Stone or Rocks was in the town name or something. Yeah. Anyway, that's all there was.
Gravel.
Gravel. Just dust. Nothing but dust. Right. What was I saying? Therapy.
I am not Gravel, Kim. Sorry, everybody.
My therapist said how much of Teague's concern about boundaries might be based on my own history with not having strong boundaries, in that we were talking about the ins and outs of ethical non-monogamy, and if I had a long history of giving too much of myself, my therapist was like, could it be that Teague is concerned that you will A, give too much of yourself to him in agreeing to things that you're not comfortable with, or B, give too much of yourself to someone outside the relationship, which is what he has experienced. And I was just like, oh yeah, so I'm broken, and my brokenness is breaking more things.
Yeah, for sure.
That was my interpretation of that.
Which when put under so much duress as we were, that's something that you do come back to when I think about it, is that, we had, you can look back on it with so much rose-colored glass kind of territory, but so much of it was hard work. It was difficult, and there was a fair bit of discord that was being managed, and it was tough. And that particular, that element was a real character for the second half of the trip. Basically, like that was a whole half of it was occupied by that kind of processing, which is kind of amazing.
I got to the point where I loathed to speak my mind to you about it, because I'm like, Bailey is so sick of hearing me talk in circles about this issue that will only be resolved when we get home, yet somehow I keep digging myself deeper.
The memory that kind of comes up for me, honestly, when thinking about this song is actually in Yosemite. And I think about, just the visual came up. So where we were staying in Yosemite, we kind of probably have described this in the first season, but we were in this sort of strip of rooms that backed out onto a kind of like a river creek situation. It was a bit too big to be a creek, but it wasn't quite big enough to feel like a river.
I think they call it a river.
Yeah.
Do they?
Anyway, whatever it was beautiful.
So beautiful.
And you kind of sat in the backyard, and there was just this beautiful running creek. And then when the sun went down, and this is a place where there's no internet, and you're like out in the middle of, the wilderness in a way, even though you're sort of still definitely like, it was, a resort effectively, kind of cabiny kind of situation. But then when the sun goes down, all the trees had fairy lights in them. And it was just as a sort of first port of call for us, after doing a day of, I think we did one night in San Francisco, if that.
One night, and
One
then
night, that's
straight
right.
away we
And then went out to Yosemite. So the San Francisco kind of only half counted, really. It went straight up to Yosemite. And as the first sort of landing place to go, okay, we're starting, it just kind of was, I don't know, when I think about sort of the figure inside and the small child, or sort of the optimism, kind of hearing all of the discord outside, and kind of and thinking about, well, I feel like kick me, like go, like don't forget that I'm in here, like, kind of there was just, and you talked about, really finding Scarlett as a figure, as a reflection of yourself in that evening, and that was really powerful to hear. And I don't know if you want to reflect on that, but it was such a great place to begin everything, because it did kind of crystallize what the heart of the trip actually was, beyond all of the kind of chaos that was surrounding, and what it was really about.
Well, up until it had just been like 3-4 months of endless planning, and then
it on top of every, like 3-4 months of endless planning, on top of the year and a bit that since the idea had kind of had its genesis.
But then we were too flustered when we landed in San Fran, and it was like literally we went and got dinner at Harvey's, which has now closed, in the Castro, and then went to sleep. We didn't do anything in San Francisco that night, and then by 9:30 the next day we were buying SIM cards and driving to Yosemite. Like that was our San Francisco. So by the time we arrived in Yosemite, it was, oh fuck, we're here. It has arrived. This is what we have been chasing for so long, and here we are to experience it. So I had this kind of moment, jet lagged, 3 a.m. or whatever it was, sitting out in my underwear on that back veranda, looking at the water lit by fairy lights. And I was just like, oh, hang on. I'm not here to find Scarlett. I'm here to find me. And like, I am Scarlett. And so, that almost birthing yourself kind of idea.
Thread kind of did, for sure.
Really struck home.
I mean, like Ruby, I think we had actually, when we talked about planning this podcast, we had talked about putting Ruby as the last episode, because we were like, well, the themes are just so critical to the sort of overarching
Thanks for nothing,
theme.
Shuffle.
That's really my fault, isn't it? But so kind of critical as a thematic alignment with what it is that you're writing about. Yeah, that's cool.
How's your writing going?
Oh golly, it's getting there. It's been slow, and I am making peace with not going to be able to hit my deadline. And I'm really disappointed about that, because I was so looking forward to getting it out by kind of being like, oh, that's the 20th of October. It's the anniversary of Scarlett's Walk. I really wanted to kind of get it around that time. But the likelihood of me writing a collection that I'm proud of within that window of time is really, really slim. So I'm hoping to get it through by Christmas. But I mean, I'm also kind of sitting in a couple of other realities, one of which is I only released Ulysses in April. Like, I'm still riding the high of my first one, to then sort of pull out a second one out of the hat. And Ulysses was like 2 years late. So like, chill.
Yeah.
Girl.
But look, you've always got the 25th anniversary in 3 years' time.
Hey, there you go. That'll be fun. But at the same time, it's kind of, I'm in an interesting place, because I did an event last week called Bloodletting for a mutual friend of ours, Bo. And I did a piece called My Happiness. I read it and I realized that, so much of the poems I'm writing have, so much to do with America, and I'm sort of kind of having a bit of a nervousness or an angst about releasing a collection and trying to promote it and be like, it's about America, and I think I'm going to need to do a big preface in this collection about when we traveled there, it was 2022. This is before XYZ had happened. By the time the collection comes out, we'll know if we've got a second Trump term on our hands. Like, I just meant this feels like a really odd time to be releasing, and I can only imagine how much that same thought is impacting you. But kind of going, okay, well, how am I going to place this in my own artistic exercises, but also, you know, to people who trust me as a poet and trust my work, you know, how do I sit there and go, oh yeah, you know, we should talk about America? And I think I'm coming to terms with how I want to do that, but that's been a big kind of piece of what's preventing me from moving forward at this point, is that I really need to understand how I'm pitching the collection as a collection, and a reason to kind of read it and to invest in it. And I think that we're really well placed to do that because we saw so much of it, and we saw beneath the surface, superficial levels of the United States. I think having thought about that, I feel like I've got a big writing day set up for Wednesday. I think I just want to listen to Unrepentant Geraldines a bit, which kind of does abuse a lot of beautiful talk about processing the States and processing American politics. I think I just want to have a listen to some.
I read a poetry collection last week
Oh.
by Amber McBride, who has The Mermaid Story in my fairy tales collection.
Yeah.
Her work is just exquisite, but this is her first poetry collection for adults. Usually she writes verse novels for teenagers or middle grade. It's called Thick with Trouble, and it's so good, and so much of it I was like, yeah, Bailey will get in on this.
Please. Thank you for the recommendation.
And all the American listeners of this, go buy all of Amber McBride's books.
Yay!
Especially her poetry collection, Thick with Trouble.
Cool. So that's kind of where I'm at. I did have a big burst of inspiration the other day, which was really exciting, for a poem that I've called Lol.
Lol.
And it came from a conversation with Matt Katz, who, I don't know if Matt will listen to this, but Matt, if there are Tory fans listening to this, you might know Matt Katz, who's a big ear with feet and an absolute darling.
Created our theme song
For the podcast, that's right, and produced all of the tracks for the musical side of what I do. But we're having this conversation about Mother Earth and this kind of this idea that is really resonant for me about the Earth going, I'm fine. Like, this is actually nothing to do with me. This is entirely about all this like Earth destruction stuff. Actually has nothing to do with me. It's entirely about you. It's entirely about your survivability as a species. It's got nothing to do with me as such. And just kind of, I don't know, giving Mother Earth this kind of voice of like a bit of a like kind of Gen Z Greta Thunberg kind of like whatever, like
sucks to be you.
Yeah, literally, like, yeah, you think this is my problem? Lol. Like, it's just kind of like it's in that kind of realm. So
nice.
Felt really nice to just kind of fly one out the other a little while ago. So we're working on it.
Nice.
What's the next kind of big junction for you? What's kind of the next? Well, the next thing is finishing off.
Yeah. So I have been editing, and by editing I mean I've been trying to trim away as much as possible. Yeah, it was far too long.
I sense some sort of Scarlet's Web-esque like blog for all the like excess pieces. So sign up to Michael's Patreon if you want to catch those things.
Interestingly, I've gotten into a great groove with my editing where I'm almost halving the word count, but I have not removed plot, description, or content really. I have learned that I am an overwriter, and I say things very verbosely and probably 3 times in slightly different ways because I see the poetry in each of them. So I'm taking entire paragraphs and making them sentences.
Yeah, right.
I'm like combining, condensing, but not actually removing any substance.
Yeah.
I'm just making it so much more succinct, which is exhilarating.
I'll bet.
And so
What's the protocol that you're kind of like thinking about writers who are like listening to this? What's kind of what's that?
So
how do you pick which of the 6 sentences to keep?
Whatever. And like, for example, but there was a sentence where I had I don't know words for words, like adjective, noun. I get them all mixed up. I'm not good with that kind of thing. I just sort of do it. But I was taking things and using them in unconventional ways, which is more of a poetry technique, but it also meant that I didn't need it there. Also, by deciding whether something is I walk or I walked or we're walking, you know, what's that called when you conjugate?
Yeah.
Playing around with conjugation can remove 4 or 5 words from a regular sentence just by saying like, well, you don't need then I walked, you know, whatever. And there's a lot of just
Bit of ambling, linguistic ambling.
choreography. There's lots of just random choreography that doesn't need there. I didn't need to literally announce every time we got in and out of the car.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
People can assume that we were viewing a waterfall, now we're driving. They'll know we got back in the car.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But all of this comes about because I have been advised that my target for the overall word count should be about 80,000. And I'm still very much over that. The first draft was 150,000.
Wow.
But I have already removed 30,000. I know I can get through. I've got 20,000 words left to edit, and I can probably get that down to 10 or 12. And so I'm still 25-ish words over.
But it's kind of I imagine it's a nice thing to go, well, okay, this first kind of comb through is going to take me down quite significantly, but I still have room to pull things like plot or, you know, or kind of decide, okay, well, I've already made that point in this other section, you know, like it's no longer strategic for me to have this particular anecdote or this particular element of that anecdote. And so then you're going to be pulling, that's going to, like, the unstitching of that is going to be a lot more smooth. Yeah.
If I was concerned that my repetitive whining to Bailey in the car was too much, the reader is not going to want to put up with it either.
Yeah, potentially not.
But also...
Unless it's productive. And that's,
yeah.
You know, unless it kind of, it gets...
It progresses the argument. It refines what I'm going through.
100%.
You know, all of that.
What just helps people understand. I mean, because the book was always intended to kind of shed some light on a particular pathway.
Yeah.
Out of complete and utter desolation.
Yeah.
As a result of relationship abuse. So, you know, I mean, of course, we can't kind of, you know, gloss over that. You know, and I think people are willing to kind of see the extra hurdles and trip hazards and tough, rough patches, you know, that are there.
But also, by getting it down to closer to 100,000 words, which is my goal, I'm then able to feel comfortable in having done the majority of that hard work myself. And then I've got writers group beta readers that are going to read the whole thing from beginning to end. And having an outside perspective will be really helpful. Them being able to say, you describe the buildings in New York City too much, it doesn't add to the plot, or whatever, etc., etc.
You got a little bit too mopey at the time you were stuck in Palm Springs. Let's move on. The drive from the airport in Florida didn't need to be 3 pages.
Precisely.
In the rain.
All that jazz. So...
Take out the bit about Disneyland.
No, I have to leave that there because I'm such a whiny prat. That's my takeaway from this whole trip.
Such a Suki Lala.
Maybe
that's the name for the book.
Suki Lala. Yeah. I think that'll be a bestseller.
I'd buy it. Someone was like, there's this really great book. It's about 3 queers who pile in a car and drive across America. It's called Suki Lala. Like, oh my God. It's just something about it. Especially if it's like, if the by title is like, surviving queer relationship abuse. Just saying that, okay, this is clearly a very serious book that has like got this like cheeky side to it.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Pre-order now on the Devil Machine. No.
Yes.
I try not to ever speak the name.
Yes, the sad place that I have. I am so, I'm so hopeful that when people are like, oh, I want to buy your collection. I'm like, please just buy it from Avenue.
Yeah.
Please just go to Avenue or Neighbourhood Books and buy it from there. I don't want you to have to buy it online, and I don't want to have to buy a huge amount of stock for you to buy it from me, because that money just goes straight back to the place anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, technically it all goes back there because they're technically also my printer, so when I need to buy copies to give to the bookstores, but at least some money goes to the bookstore.
Yeah. Because we love a bookstore.
We do love a bookstore. I think we've made it to song recommendations.
Oh yeah, we do that. God, this is going to be fun without any preparation.
I don't think that's true at all. I think we know a billion songs that are like this, that have this kind of... I feel like the first thing that came to mind is Why by Annie Lennox.
Oh yeah, nice one.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to try and focus on a single song, but basically the whole band, like all of the songs by a band called Soda Blonde. I am obsessed with Soda Blonde recently. They're Irish, and I have never come across a band that sings almost exclusively about like unhappy relationships, abusive relationships, wanting like all the situations you would crave to leave, but so eloquently and beautifully. Let's just tie in with that line about Feel a Little Hand. They have a song called Terrible Hands, and the chorus is, I'm in terrible, terrible, terrible hands. You should really look them up. I just love them so much. And I love that they're singing about relationships in a way that does not romanticize it endlessly.
That's great. There's a song I've been kind of listening to a lot lately. Like anyone who knows me knows I'm a big Moona fan, and Moona are big Tory fans, but none more than Katie Gavin, who's the lead singer of Moona, who's recently gone out on her own and is about to release a solo record, and she put a single out a couple of days ago called Inconsolable. This song has undone me. It's so beautiful. And funnily enough, Katie did like some weird bit of promo ahead of the album release where she got to go into a record store and was supposed to pick like 3 records. Like, it's like called like shoplifting. Like, they get singers to come in and they pick 3 vinyl from the store. She's like, I picked 12, but there we go. And one of them was Scarlet Sword.
Amazing.
Which was really cool. And she talked about how Tori was one of the biggest influences, is like one of, if not the biggest influence on her as a lyricist. And Inconsolable is beautifully lyricized, so that's one that...
Well, I'm going to jump from your Moona reference.
Please do.
To just this last week, I'm rediscovering/discovering Tegan and Sarah, because I'm like, when did you have 25 albums, or however many ridiculous? They have so many albums. I had no idea that they had quite so many. But the album, has always been my favorite, and I was reminded of the Con rework project.
Oh yeah.
And Moona covered Relief Next to Me, which is one of the best songs from the album. And Relief Next to Me ties in very nicely with this. So I'm going to go with Tegan and Sarah's version, so we don't have too much Moona.
Fair enough. And I think Moona's version is very Moona, but it doesn't beat. It's not a patch on the original, the Tegan and Sarah original. Particularly like their voices at that stage, before they really kind of went and kind of cleaned up a lot of their pop sensibility. I think
the Con is where they had honed that teenage, I guess, or early 20s angst, and their musical stylings and lyrics so succinctly and perfectly. And then they move from there towards pop, which is fine. I enjoy their pop stuff too, but I just think the Con is a superb album from beginning to end. And so, Relief Next to Me won't go my whole life telling you I don't need. Oh, so good.
It is so good. It's late, and I have had a cup of tea dangled. We had a bit of... So I'm not allowed to drink tea on when we make... Like, I love having a
No
cup
tea
of
in the studio.
No tea in the studio because I slurp and I swish.
I got fed up editing out swallowing noises.
So I've been very keen for my cup of tea. So we're not going to let the randomizer continue. What is our next episode? Do we?
Are we gonna plan it now?
Yeah, let's do it. So we obviously did Mountain was our first.
Do we want to lighten the mood a little bit and try and decipher Bugger Martini?
Sounds like a plan to me. Send me to Moscow.
Yeah, I was about to launch into analysis of it, but that's next
episode.
We will do that then.
And then, I mean, by then, where do we hope to be by then, creatively? Because I feel like we're hitting our stride now at the moment, you and me. Like, I feel like things are going to start moving very quickly.
Well, it also depends on when we actually end up meet to record.
Well, I mean, we should be in the diary.
It was in the diary for Wednesday.
Oh, that's right, and then I screwed up. I'm a screw up.
So let's assume that it's somewhere in the 2 weeks vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely hope to have well and truly finished my second draft by then.
And you'll be in, send it out to the beta readers, of which I might be one.
Hopefully.
Fingers crossed. And then I hopefully will be well and truly into manuscript. I should be like well and truly into the guts of the book. And I'm hoping to get the photo shoot booked.
Yeah.
Matthew Taylor doesn't know that yet. But if you're listening, Matthew, I'm about to give you a message so we can try and book.
But for now, let's put the kettle on, shall we?
Yeah, let's. Thanks, everybody.
Call me Polly. The Michael's Walk podcast acknowledges that the journey they are undertaking takes place on the sacred and unceded nations of many proud Indigenous peoples. From the lands of the Wurundjeri and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, we are fortunate to call home, to each and every Native American tribe's land we'll set foot on as we travel. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and humbly acknowledge their sovereignty.